Welcome to Car and Driver. This is the Hyundai Ioniq 6 and it's our EV of the year for 2023. Each year, we gather the newest and most interesting all-electric vehicles on the market, ranging from entry-level commuters to high-end luxury vehicles to trucks and 10,000-pound SUVs. Over the course of 2 weeks, we test the performance and range of each and drive them back-to-back on the same roads. We evaluate usability, driving enjoyment, value, and so on within the context of each vehicle's segment. This may only be our third running of this event, but expectations run high. Oh, your car offers 300 miles? That's okay, but not a big deal anymore. Ditto with sub-5-second 60-mile-an-hour times and crazy fast DC charging speeds. While internal combustion engines continue to evolve gradually after more than a century of incremental improvements, with EVs, the rate of improvement is like going from carburetors to fuel injection every year. Tesla enthusiasts have probably already pointed out by now that their favorite vehicle wasn't included this year, and that's because this is the first year Tesla had nothing new to offer. One thing we've learned in the short history of this contest: you can't take innovation for granted. A company that's out in front one year might be in the middle of the pack the next. Or it might stay on a hot streak, continuing to reimagine mainstream transportation for an electric future. Speaking of hot streaks, let's consider the Hyundai-Kia group. Last year, the winner was the Ioniq 5, and this year it's that model's sedan sibling. But also consider strong performances this year by the Genesis GV70 Electrified and Kia EV6 GT. When you do, a picture begins to form. In the broad swath of the EV marketplace, the Hyundai-Kia group is clearly out in front. The Ioniq 6 shares much with the Ioniq 5, but we also think it does a little bit more. Consider design. The Ioniq 5 looks great with that boxy, retro-futuristic, quasi-cyberpunk vibe, but this looks every bit as striking, but for different reasons. Hyundai says the 1930s stout scarab was a design inspiration. We also see a bit of first-generation Mercedes-Benz CLS in that sloping roofline, but no matter what it evokes in you, you just have to acknowledge this is a great-looking sedan. There's purpose in the aerodynamic design too. This shape gets you a drag coefficient as low as 0.22, and we also appreciate that this is just a good-looking sedan instead of yet another generic crossover. As for propulsion, you get a couple options. There's a single motor mounted on the rear axle that delivers 149 horsepower with the smaller battery pack. The larger battery steps it up to 225 horsepower. And there's a dual motor all-wheel drive setup that cranks out 340 horsepower. And most Ioniq 6s are going to have a battery pack that's 77.4 kilowatt hours. As for range, it's also quite a spread. We tested a limited long range, and that went 220 miles on our real-world highway loop where we drive at a constant 75 miles an hour. That's about 80% of its 270-mile EPA range rating. Now, if you need more mileage than that, they also offer a rear drive SE, I believe it's called, on 18-inch wheels. That one's rated at 361 miles, and we got 300 miles roughly during our real-world range test. What matters more on long-distance drives is charging speed, and a properly working DC fast charger, of course. While our infrastructure is still growing, the Ioniq 6 has an 800-volt architecture that averaged 153 kilowatt in our charge test. But what does that mean in reality? We made a theoretical map of how far each EV of the Year contender could drive in 10 hours based on our test results. We assume each vehicle starts at a full charge, stops to recharge at 10%, and continues driving after an 80% fill as charging slows dramatically in the battery's upper reaches. We also optimized the last stint to maximize distance in the allotted time so a vehicle wasn't spending its last few minutes at the charging station. The Lexus RZ450e has the least highway range, 120 miles, and it isn't particularly quick to recharge, so it's plugged in for just over 3 hours in 5 stops and makes it only 515 miles in 10 hours. A massive battery such as the Hummer EVs can help with range on the first stint, but a vehicle needs to be both efficient and quick to recharge to do well. For those reasons, the Hyundai Ioniq 6 narrowly emerged as the distance champ, requiring 58 minutes of charging over 3 stops to go 678 miles, with the BMW i7 and Lucid Air Pure a mere 5 miles behind. While the Ioniq 6's result is certainly impressive, a BMW M340i xDrive burning gas at a rate of 33 mpg could go 747 miles in 10 hours with a single fuel stop of just over a minute. The charging speed isn't the only thing that's quick. This dual motor version reached 60 miles an hour in 4.3 seconds in our testing, where the single motor version is of course a little bit slower. That needed 6.2 seconds. You can also expect more of a slowdown with the smaller 53 kilowatt hour battery. The solid structure and quality of the damping gives you a nice ride over Michigan's less than perfect roads, let's say. Hyundai's also figured out the braking, both in terms of pedal feel and how you adjust the amount of regenerative braking. You use these paddles behind the steering wheel, and that allows you to switch between the various modes, which goes from max regen, which will take you all the way to a stop, or none at all. It's the kind of simple elegance or brilliance that makes you wonder why other automakers have such difficulty figuring this out. Don't expect crazy upscale materials, though the interior design is quite inventive. We also really like these sleek door panels. Thankfully, Hyundai didn't reinvent the wheel with its infotainment system. It's simple and straightforward, and so is all the surrounding switchgear, which, unlike some other EVs, isn't different just for the sake of being different. Thank you, Hyundai. Now, as for storage, the space up here in the center console is plenty usable, though the trunk is a bit smaller than we'd like, and this frunk is basically useless. From its design to its charging speed to the way it feels from behind the wheel, the Ioniq 6 is a well-executed EV and a car we actually want to drive. This polished machine makes only a few missteps as it puts Hyundai into the winner's circle again.